The number of confirmed deaths has passed 200. The governor has called a state of emergency.
There are hundreds and hundreds of bodies lining the streets.
Panic spread worldwide after a leaked report from the World Health Organization showed that the latest vaccination tests have failed.
With the bureaucrats out of power, we can finally take the necessary steps.
Los Angeles is now the latest city to be placed under martial law. All residents are required to report to their designated quarantine. Riots have continued for a third consecutive day, and winter rations are at an all-time low.
A group calling themselves the Fireflies have claimed responsibility for both attacks.
Their public charter calls for the return of all branches of government.
Demonstrations broke out following the execution of 6 more alleged Fireflies.
You can still rise with us. Remember, when you're lost in the darkness, look for the light. Believe in the Fireflies.
The Last of Us was a series in a time of zombie fever. The Walking Dead was at its peak in the show. The Telltale Games was released a year before The Last of Us. The public was foaming at the mouth for zombies, so much so that the Wii U got a zombie game. Side note, the Wii U just generally feels like a fever dream, but it really feels like Nintendo snorted coke while watching a zombie movie and said, typing, and they just ran with it. But back on track. In a time where the zombie medium was drowning the market, the one thing I come back to over and over is The Last of Us. You have a very grounded view to a market that asks you to suspend your belief in how do you watch characters. After years of nothing between releases besides a backstory DLC, the second game was released to a lot of question marks and mixed reactions to it. Now a remake has been announced for the PS5, which I will get around to talking to at the end. And with an HBO TV series starting production not too long ago, I think it's time to talk about the Last of Us franchise. The Last of Us was released on June 14th, 2013 on the PS3, which by itself was seeing a resurgence. Due to Sony's inept launch and the reworking of the console, by the end of its cycle, it had become a success. While it was a little too late for the PS3 to have any type of success that was worth talking about. The remastered version of The Last of Us PS4 was released on June 29th, 2014, with a post-launch DLC included. Made by Naughty Dog, the same people who made the Uncharted franchise and the Jak and Daxter games, and some of the Crash Bandicoots. It follows a troubled man in a world that will infect people after a loss of his daughter 20 years ago. Which, I'm not one to cry at any type of media unless it's something I'm completely invested in. But the first 10 minutes of the game made me cry at Sarah's death the first time I played this, and it's just so emotional. I don't know how they got me super invested with 5-10 minutes of gameplay, but I guess this is how you do it. Joel, the man, who finds himself smuggling a 14-year-old girl to a rebellion group after an armed deal goes wrong. When you think about this game, it sounds weird from Joel looking for guns to be a father figure to Ellie. The 14-year-old girl is revealed shortly to be immune to the disease that has made these infected, with a domino effect that leads them across the country to deliver her to the Fireflies, the rebellion group. The Last of Us' storytelling is its strong suit. Magnificent created characters only take a few minutes to have a hold on your heartstrings. The two main characters, Joel and Ellie, are personally some if not my favorite fictional characters of all time. They aren't Boy Scouts like Superman or extremely tortured saints like Batman or Daredevil, but they're human, flawed people. It might be a good way to pad time, but this is best shown through Ellie's ability to swim. It shows that even as invincible as most players have become accustomed to the ever-popular FPS, they aren't here. Attach yourself to these characters makes you feel as vulnerable as they do. This is masterfully done by the voice acting work of Troy Baker, who's done all of these characters. You've heard his voice before. And Ash Johnson, who's in the popular D&D series Critical Role, Blind Spot, and that one waitress that talked to Captain America in the first Avengers movies in that deleted scene and shows up in the news montage.
Captain America saved my life. Wherever he is, and wherever any of them are, I would just...
Yeah, that one. They encapsulate the role in a way where I find it hard the TV show is going to be able to replicate a type of in gravitas. They have this connection that is super present in the actual game. You ran straight through it, but shines most in those little dialogue exchanges throughout the game while you're observing the environment.
Teamwork.
Throughout the story, you feel the characters in every ache, fear, and happiness that they feel. You even get angry at yourself at the same time as they do. The theme of hope that this game provokes at the end of the tunnel is so powerful. Not even for a hope for a cure, a hope of survival and seeing the next morning. Maybe that's what captured my interest in it. I played this at one of my biggest lows in my life. Not to get into details, but it's pretty bad. The hope and drive that the story lays out keeps you going. It's a thing that I keep close to my chest as a reminder of my responsibility, even if it just means getting out of bed the next day. Okay, moving on. The two main characters are what has gotten everyone's heart for good reason. But the side characters, the fear and disgust I have for David at the end of this game, the hatred I have for him is astronomical. I really can't even say why though. First of all, it is so disgusting, I don't want it to come out of my mouth. If you want to know what I'm talking about, watch or go back and replay his final scene and what it's alluding to. Second, it makes a very passive mention that he's a kid.
You can't say that.
What?
No, like, seriously,
Yeah,
you can't say
I'll say kid.
You can't say
What?
that word.
The other thing is so much worse. Whatever. Apparently YouTube doesn't like the other word either. You know what? You know what I was gonna say. Tommy in conjunction with Joel is a small character, but it's how it's implemented with all the missing time between the beginning of the game and the majority of the game. Tommy feels like a character with a lot of grudges and mistakes that he regrets. The music in this game is fantastic. Gustavo Santaella, I'm probably saying that wrong, creates pieces that pull on your heartstrings, make you feel hopeless in the shambles of the world. It's something that I listen to on a daily basis. It is that good and matches sculpted for the game and the world it inhabits. It's just a beautiful art piece. The world of the first Last of Us feels so real, broken, and hopeful all at the same time through its story just by itself. The gameplay of The Last of Us is where it really lacks. It feels clunky at times. A lot when you're moving around, you feel extremely slow. I swear, my L1 is probably broken from holding it for so long. When you're trying to move around, it feels like you're kind of in this set box, like an old Game Boy game. You don't really feel like you have full control of Joel. The gunplay feels a whole lot different. It's faster, less player safe, which honestly in this game would be great. But it hurts when you go from crouching, hidden, upright to where you don't really normally. But if you were to do it normally, it feels like an Internet Explorer trying to find Google by itself. The sound when you try to listen for enemies is kind of wonky. I can tell you how many times a clicker, that clicks to find out where they're going, creeps up on me. So it just feels clunky. If it was a little more seamless movement system, it would be perfect. The crafting system, although, works masterfully. You really feel like a lack of resources available to you. It creates a lot of problem-solving attempts and failures. I love when games make me use my brain to figure out how to deal with an issue. That if I played it a different way, it'd be a lot easier. And as someone that's pretty stubborn, I'll figure out how to play my way. Even if that means I die a lot. While a crafting system creates an excellent big brain usage, the upgrade system feels very dumbed down. I think it'd be a huge plus if it's like Tomb Raider, where you had to find the pieces strung across the game. Or like make you decide whether you needed a temporary weapons like Molotovs, or if you needed to upgrade that pistol for the rest of the game. Making resources that already rare and more valuable than they already are. Honestly, the pistol feels like I'm saving up for the upgrade rather than earning it, or like I'm buying it from a shop in an open world game, rather than creating it on my own. The stealth on this game is a plus. When compared to Skyrim or the Arkham series, getting caught feels like you're condemned to death rather than when you play Batman, you can either run or brute force away like in Skyrim. If you try to do it either of those ways, it feels like it's going to be a bad day for you. Trust me, I've tried. The graphics make it hard for me to find things at times, but it isn't too distracting. I mean, it's PS3 graphics, it's beautiful for those PS3 graphics, and on the PS4, they still look pretty good, even if it's very low res. It's not the greatest, but it could be a lot worse. It drags for a massive full story that's conjoined to, but doesn't distract from a perfect game that it is. The Last of Us is a one game I would call a masterpiece. Every story beat, every single second of this game had me on the edge of my seat. Even if there's 7 playthroughs, I can't get sick of it. 7 times, it makes me solidify my opinion even more and more every time. Before anyone says it, I played other games like more than 7 times, and some don't even rank my top 20 of those games. The Last of Us is a game I recommend to everyone who's looking for a new single player game to play. When Logan came out, I found an art piece of the movie in the style of the cover art of The Last of Us. Like Logan, the only word I can probably describe The Last of Us is a masterpiece. That's how highly I recommend this game. The Last of Us Part 2 was released on July 19th, 2020. Same thing with the PS3, the PS4 was at the end of its life cycle. Well, I guess it's been extended because of this fucker, COVID. And well, assholes who keep buying up the stock of PS5s. Maybe let's say people who do the previous installment, Naughty Dog. I want to kind of get into Part 2 immediately. And well, this is going to feel like a defense of Part 2. Unlike the previous game, this one did not receive universal praise. So here goes nothing. The Last of Us Part 2 takes place around 5 years after the end of the first game. Ellie has become aware of Joel's actions at the end of the game, and that he did in fact lie to her. Which pushes Ellie and Joel apart, and there's this intense block that you can feel in every interaction they have in the game. Like someone just sucked all the oxygen out of the room. It's so powerful without ever really showing a boil over of anger between any of the characters. And the scene where Joel does tell her what happened, or actually doesn't really tell her in general, is so powerful. And I don't get how people hate this game. Okay, moving on. Ellie is a flawed adult, so she's bound to get a love interest. If you never played Left Behind, the DLC from the first game, surprise! She's a lesbian! Wait, what? People had a problem with this? Really? Okay, first of all, this whole I don't want to show to my face bullshit, you guys need to get over. When is it gonna be okay to show gay characters in any type of media? It's not even being shoved in your face when there's one gay character in the whole game, or 2, I guess. And it's shown in the previous fucking game. It did come out of left field, it came out behind. Get it? Yeah, okay, whatever. It took you 7 years to find this out. This game is basically a coming out story for a good portion of it, and it's fully realized in the ups and downs of the relationship that her and one of my new favorite characters, Dina, have. It's even showed the gay hate crimed upon in Jackson. Oh, and if you're still wondering what my opinion on an LGBT community is, here you go. Get the fuck off my page. Ugh. Okay, so that's out of the way. Like I said, Dina, who is Ellie's love interest, is an endearing character who I thought was only being a sliver of the game, but it becomes one of the most major players in the whole story, which I fucking love. Which kind of leads to the next issue that everyone in this game has. While Ellie and Dina are fucking around, get it, and the rotations, while Blizzard comes to the area, Joel and Tommy seem a random survivor in the area while attempting to flee A, a blizzard, and B, a horde of zombies. Well, it turns out that survivor is the daughter of one of the doctors that was going to operate on Ellie, and, well, we know what happens. So when she enacts revenge upon Joel, she kills him pretty brutally, I might add, right in front of Ellie after she arrives. The heartbreaking loss not only to Ellie, but to the player who had Joel to act as a father figure for both. People got pissed about this. I get it, I really do. Joel's one of my favorite characters of all time. But did you guys not see it coming? His death was extremely important to the story. Abby, the murderer, loses her father due to, unfortunate circumstances. Plots a whole revenge murder on him. Follows every murmur and whisper she can get her hands on for 5 straight years. Finds it by a stroke of luck. Does, leaves with a posse. Basically tries to live her life in peace, but oops, ends up ruining her love life, pushing those who she loves most and out, and ends up all alone. But in this case, the 14-year-old boy who's trans. Big win for representation, by the way. Okay, but that's the basic outline of her story. But yeah, Ellie, the character you know and love, has her father die to, unfortunate circumstances. Plots a whole revenge murder conspiracy with Tommy. Ends up accidentally roping in the love of her life. Follows every rumor and murmur she gets her hands on. Finds her by, unfortunate circumstances. Finds her after a long journey. Ends up pushing the love of her life out. And the ones she cares about most of her life. Ends up all alone. Attempts to kill her in a weak attempt after realizing she's got a young kid that's all alone, that needs someone to care for them and love them. Do you not see how Abby and Ellie are like are two sides of the same coin? It's an excellent demonstration of how your perception of someone could be detrimental, because they may just be just like you. It's a mirror of storytelling. Abby is Lev's Joel. Lev, the 14-year-old boy, obviously. Ellie is about to be Lev's Abby if she ends up killing her, just like continuing the cycle of torment. In the end of the game, I really didn't want to kill Abby. Learning about everything she had to go through, what had happened to her, it was nature's cycle about what she did to Joel. Joel is human. He did a lot of shitty things. And he murdered a ton of people. If anything, it's a reflection of Ellie, if anything. She was full of rage and torment. When it came down to it, she saw that it was futile. And if Abby's worst thing was killing Joe, she had more good to do. The whole reason it was called Part 2 rather than Last of Us 2 is because they are meant to be bigger. They're meant to be of a bigger story, and lines need to be connected between the two. A sequel is a progression of the story. Part 2 is a continuation from Part 1. This is something you should expect from Neil Druckmann. His storylines are basic, but his characters are what drive the story. The theme of revenge, it pushes both these characters' stories. Abby is getting over it and regretting the act of her revenge throughout the whole game. Ellie is aiming to claim her revenge. And I can admit, the pacing in this game can feel a little off, driven from perspective to perspective, but I can live with it. I wish I could have just played from Ellie's story and had the story jump into Abby's, but honestly, it's fine. It's easier to draw lines from events occurring between the two, and I also think that there should be an option to kill Abby at the end of the story. It could have just been a non-canonical ending. I could just imagine the ending of Ellie finishing off Abby. You can see her stagger off on her knees in the water as Abby's corpse lays there, floating on top of the water. Zoom up to see Ellie crying from all that she's lost in the game, after thinking she already had lost everything from Joel's death. As we pan up, we see that Lev starts wrestling in the boat. As we refocus the camera, we see that Lev is pointing a pistol at Ellie. The screen goes dark. All you hear is a gunshot. Roll credits. Honestly, I think that's a good way to punish players for not going to the canonical ending and taking upon the revenge, rather than, forgiving Abby after seeing her story. I think it would also satisfy a lot of players who are still angry at Abby for what she had done. She's dead. I mean, Ellie's dead too, but... And if you're still angry at Abby from whether if you're not connecting the dots from the previous game, or not seeing it as an eye for an eye type situation, the story is still beautifully done. It's one of my favorite games. I think it's not up to the standard that the first one set, but it doesn't mean it's a bad game by any means. It controls so much better than the first, and it's better refined than the last. The extension of Joel and Ellie's story, shown in flashbacks, adds so much heart to an otherwise really dark story. The game is beautiful. Every character model and environments are breathtaking. Honestly, if I was walking past the TV playing this game for a demo, I would honestly think it's one of those live action TV shows that everyone's been talking about that I haven't watched yet. When it comes to the bad reviews, this game, I think it comes from people who have already made up the story in their head. It happens for every big series with a highly anticipated release. Take this as a lesson from me. Let the storytellers tell their stories. You're paying to enjoy these anyways. Your headcanon is yours for a reason. Do not put on the writers to satisfy your fantasy. That somehow, in a fucking zombie apocalypse, that both Ellie and Joel were gonna live happily ever after. When they eventually get around to doing a part 3, do not be surprised if Ellie ends up dying. It's the type of world where happy endings don't really happen. Even in the first game, didn't have one. So, just please do me a favor. Put your pride down, put your headcanon down. For a few hours, sit down and play both games back to back. You'll enjoy and have a new respect for part 2. I promise. The reports I've been reading on this remake have been varied. One says it's a complete overhaul, others say it's fixing mechanics and updating graphics. I mean, like I said, it's clunky, but I wouldn't call it a remake, I would call it a remaster. For those who don't know, remasters are taking the base game, updating the graphics, giving it little bumps and textures. Pretty simple from a game development standpoint. It's very complicated though. A remake is making improvements to the game, but generally sticking to the same story with a little twist thrown there for whatever reason. Think the Resident Evil remakes that have been coming out, or Halloween 2007. A reboot is stripping bare bones, starting over like the Batman or Spider-Man movies that have come out. Another report says it's trying to tie into the HBO show, which I really don't know much about. My theory is that they cast the actress, who isn't really a no-name, she was in Dumbo and some other movies, want to show a little bit more of Sarah in the apocalypse rather than being just shot at the beginning of what happened. IMDb is seeing 2 episodes, so she'll probably be mauled at the end of the second episode or towards the middle of it. But the original shouldn't have to play ball with the adaptation. J.K. Rowling didn't write Harry Potter again to tie it into the movies. If it's a complete overhaul, like a brand new story, and that's a reboot. And why would you do it? Because some guys who never touched a woman can be happy with a story you told. If you guys wanted to take a game and have it placed at the same time but elsewhere, do like Arrowverse of The Walking Dead. Give it a new name, like The Last of Us, Fallen Ones. I don't know, I'm not making the game. Don't call it a reboot, call it a spin-off. Wording is very key here, especially when you're working with a loved game. It's kind of got me spooked. It's also been only 8 years, and other games that get rebooted or remade are like 20 to 30 years old, like the Final Fantasy. Or are stuck in a previous platform and are resold with a new coat of paint, like the Arkham franchise. The Last of Us and Part 2 are masterpieces that outclass every other zombie-themed franchise. With amazing complex characters, the hate that Part 2 was out of control, and many not moving on and hurt its perception. I'm a massive fan of these games. I even have a fucking tattoo. And I can't wait for Part 3. To continue Ellie's story, to get more out of this world I have fallen in love with. Even with the remake on the horizon, I will still sit down and experience the brand new story Naughty Dog has made to entertain, have fun, and tell stories with important things. The study characters they have created as well expand their borders. The Last of Us will need to be talked about later. But for now, I will let these masterpieces rest for the time being. Thank you for watching. I'm the BedTech, and you're in the internet. Have a good night, everyone. I'll see you soon.